This is Max Grossman with the El Paso Taxpayer Revolt, and today we are incredibly honored to have City Representative Brian Kennedy as our special guest. I want to begin by stating that we absolutely endorse Brian Kennedy for mayor of El Paso. We like to say that from the get-go. And today we're going to learn all about his achievements and his policy priorities going forward. And I'd like to begin by first introducing him. So glad to have you.
Thank you. I appreciate being here, and I appreciate the endorsement.
Absolutely. It's our honor. Let's begin by talking about where you're from and your experience.
I'm born and raised in North St. Paul, Minnesota.
And I'm from Minneapolis. Go Vikings. There, I said it.
That's right. The big purple.
5-0.
That's right.
5-0.
It's been a while since we've been 5-0. And most of my family still lives in Minnesota. I went into the Army from that area and then traveled the world with the U.S. Army. So I still have family. I still go back and see my mother, who's now 94 years old. I saw her a couple of weeks ago. So whenever possible, I go back to the Twin Cities.
Wonderful. Okay. And in the Army, you were in military intelligence.
I was a Russian, Polish, Czechoslovakian, and Serbo-Croatian interrogator. Predominantly Russian. The rest of them are Slavic languages that were offshoots. But I was a Russian interrogator for military intelligence, and that's what brought me to El Paso. Because they were stationed out at the end of Biggs Field. There was a big building, and I said, it's the big building with no windows. And it was cinder block and no windows, and it was a secure building. And there was probably 200 linguists that were there, all different languages, because we could go from here to Dallas and go to Europe, or here to California and go to Southeast Asia. So we were here just as a holding tank, and we went wherever that we were needed.
Wow. And what years are we talking about?
I got here in 1976.
Okay.
So it's been almost 50 years.
Just after the Vietnam War.
Just afterwards, and then I got here and I found home. I tell people I was unpacking, I took my snow shovel out, and my neighbor said, "What kind of crazy shovel is that?" And I said, "Wow, I have found my home." And I love this place. This became home quickly, and I'm not leaving.
Good. I'm not leaving either, by the way. Okay. So after your discharge from the Army, tell us about your professional experience all the way up until 2 years ago.
Well, I mean, I had a part-time radio job, and I was going to college, and went through. I was 1 year left in my undergraduate studies, and I'd been accepted to law school, and then life got in the way. I had a wife and kids, and I had to go to work. So, I was still a disc jockey for quite a while. Along the way, I spent some time. A friend of mine was Prince's lead guitar player from Minneapolis. We went to North St. Paul High School.
I saw Prince many times on First Avenue. That was a lot of fun.
A lot of times. And so he asked me if I would be a bodyguard. They were looking for some guys, and so I said that'd be great. I did that for a little bit, and then was Rod Stewart's on his security team for a little while. But along the way, being in radio, I started to promote some concerts and do some entertainment. And so then I became really versed in the security, because I always liked the security aspect, and became a security consultant for a lot of the tours that were around and some venues, and lectured nationally on not only contracts but ingress, egress, and security. And so, from there I kicked around in radio for a little bit, and ran Vista Hills Country Club for a couple of years. They needed a manager. And from sweat equity, ended up owning part of radio stations, some here, some around the country. And it was awesome. I mean, I loved it, and got out of it, owned part of a recording studio here called Ballyhoo Studios with two partners, and ran the Coliseum for 23 years. It created the Sports Commission. I was a county employee for 5 years, and created the Sports Commission. Always wanted to go to law school. My wife, while we were sitting in our patio, said, we talk about living life without regrets, and we want to make sure that we didn't have regrets going forward. And I said, well, I did have one. To which Denise said, we've been together a long time. I can think of a few things you may want to regret, but we'll pretend there's just one. We'll pretend there's one. And I said, I'd been accepted to law school, but I had not been able to go. And she said, what are you waiting for? So 2 days later, I took the law school aptitude test, scored high enough, I got a scholarship, and and graduated 3 years later cum laude, and did that for a while. Then while I was doing the sports commission, then left the sports commission to be an attorney, and then 2 years ago decided I was going to run for city council.
I would call that a very colorful and varied career that includes a great deal of business experience and managerial experience. You've dealt with large budgets, 7 figures and larger.
Easy. We, especially when you're dealing with a tour, it could be $1 million a night.
Right.
And when you've got 10 dates, you go, it's $10 million tour, and it's going to happen in 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. So you really have to be able to make a decision quickly that makes sense. And a lot of it, especially with entertainment, you make it on the fly. You have to say, okay, give me all the best information I have because you need a decision in an hour. And so you learn how to filter out the material. Being an attorney has helped me because it helps me be a better filter and say, okay, this is unimportant. We don't have to worry about that. This is the salient facts.
Right. And we were just talking about your legal experience. You've been a practicing criminal defense attorney 6 years.
I started out as a sports and entertainment lawyer.
Oh.
I was doing sports and entertainment. I had a couple of clients. I'd just been taking my test to be an NFL agent. And then COVID hit. And there was no sports and there was no entertainment, but there was criminals. And the system was overloaded, and I felt like it would be a good place for me to spend some time. I mean, I still, to this date, have donated 10% of my hours every week to help veterans because I was a certified veteran representative with VA. And I took a lot of assigned cases because I wanted to make sure we didn't have the best system money could buy.
Right.
That we had a good system for everybody. And so right when COVID hit, I became a criminal defense lawyer, and that's what I do now.
That's wonderful. And some would say, well, how do you manage to balance your legal work with your work for the city, but actually you've been winding down in recent years, right?
Well, the minute I decided that I was gonna run for mayor, we stopped taking any new cases. We don't take any new cases at all because I don't feel it would be fair if I'm elected mayor that is a full-time job. And it wouldn't be fair to try and split my time with clients because I don't think I could do my best job for both. And if the people of El Paso show their confidence in me being mayor, then I need to take my time and dedicate all of it to being the mayor.
Makes perfect sense to me. So most people, Brian, know you from your 23 years working for, as the head of the county coliseum. What would you say were your achievements in those 23 years running that venue?
There was some entertainment and management things that I'm really proud of, but I will say that the number one thing was when COVID hit, and during that time nobody knew what we were supposed to do. I mean, we had no guidelines for anything, and the county and UMC came to me and said, we need to set up a vaccination place that works. We need to get people in and out, and you're an ingress-egress guy for Major League Sports, and said, so can you set it up? And when we took the city from the worst as far as COVID infection to one of the best, and we at that venue, I believe, if I remember the numbers exactly correctly, did a third of the population was vaccinated through the Coliseum.
A third of the population of El Paso City?
El Paso City was vaccinated through the Coliseum. And we used to average, because remember you had to wait 30 minutes after the vaccination.
Yes.
We used to average under an hour from when you walked in the door until you walked out, including the 30 minutes you waited.
Wow.
And we were so efficient at it that I had 2 other cities call me and say, can you come explain to us how you did that? And I think that was really one of my proudest moments because we were saving people's lives and we were changing a city. We had some great public-private partnerships with the not-for-profit. It's a not-for-profit company. Right. Which means everything is open to the public.
Right.
Which I thought was great. And we took a building that was not being used and is now one of the busiest venues in the Southwest. So when I left it, I also was able to train people to take my spot. So when I left, Omar Rapelli and Tony Rodriguez and Janet Vargas and Nadia Carmona are over there. And they are such a great team that I feel great that I was able to train people up to a point when I left that they took it kind of to the next level because they had a different team, different vision. But those are my proudest moments over there.
Right, excellent. And let's clarify some of the, there was some criticism from the media, I personally think it was misdirected, about audits of the County Coliseum. Let's explain that. And also about your own salary, which I think was well-deserved. I mean, you produced a hell of a lot for what you were paid. Would you like to comment on those?
Yeah, anybody who thinks that there was an audit problem with the Sports Commission doesn't know how to read an audit.
Exactly.
It was a recategorization. They said it shouldn't have been here. You didn't spend it wrong. You just should have logged it under this account. And I did, which, you know something, I'm a big fan of audits. I think it's a good way to make sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to do. So we recategorized it. I said, okay, you're right. I'll move it over there. So we moved it on the line item and everything was fine.
And the media couldn't figure that out?
No, and of course it's always great to say, oh, look, there was an exception in an audit. And by the way, the part that's so funny is they say there was a problem with the money. Do you know what that money was spent on? Picnics for the employees of El Paso County. We put on a picnic for the employees that was free for their families so they could have some summer entertainment.
Sounds ominous.
Yeah, oh, what a terrible, terrible thing. And my salary was decided after they looked at national surveys to see, you know, how much I was paid. At the end, when COVID hit, I took a pay cut on purpose because the only way we could keep all of the employees with benefits in their pay was if I took a pay cut.
And you did that voluntarily?
Yeah, I actually came up with the plan and went to the board and I said, I have to tell you that I'll be taking a pay cut, and actually moved to a consultant position, which was about 12 to 15% of what my salary was, so that they could save that money and make sure all the employees were paid.
Right.
And they were. There wasn't a single employee that missed a paycheck or a benefit or anything, even though we were down on rotating shifts. People would alternate the days they worked. But they were all paid. They all kept their full salaries and kept their benefits, and so did their family. And when I was at the Sports Commission, and I believe they still do it, we actually paid 100% of everybody's health insurance and their family's health insurance. And one of the reasons we did that is if you don't have to worry about your family being sick, you're actually coming to work more often.
Right, it's more productive.
It's more productive in the long run. So we actually did that as a benefit. So yeah, people want to throw my salary around and they always throw in the benefits, which I love because it's like, well, his full benefits. I said, well, that was a 401k that was making some money that I had for years. And I worked there 23 years, so I had a few raises.
Look, Brian, we tried as hard as we possibly could and could not find anything wrong with your record. On the contrary, it looked exemplary to us. So
well, thank you.
Congratulations on that career. Which brings us to your current career. City Council Representative District 1, which is my district. And I can tell you that in the 15 years I've been in El Paso, I've never seen stronger leadership.
Thank you.
In terms of District 1, but also in terms of the entire community. So let's talk about your term on City Council. You began January 3rd, 2023. I watched you be sworn in. And within a short time of that, things began happening pretty quickly. The arena was moved out of Duranguito. That happened pretty quickly. February 28th, not even 2 months later, Tommy Gonzalez was terminated without cause. I watched two TERSs, TRZ2 and TERS 10A, be disappeared, saving the city $9.2 million a year. I saw you assume the chairmanship of FOAC, the Financial Oversight and Audit Committee, and in that capacity audit the gas cards, and we all know the result of that, the P cards, 380 agreements, with many more issues coming through the pipeline just to make sure our city is run correctly, nobody misspends or misallocates money, and that everything is kept orderly, right? What are you most proud of in the time that you've been on City Council so far, in terms of your achievements?
That I did what I said I was going to do before I came in. The very first meeting was, they were voting on Duranguito, and I actually abstained.
I remember, yes.
And everybody said, why would you do that? And very simply because somebody came over to me, and it was city attorney, who said there's been an accusation that because you used to consult the Coliseum, that you have a conflict. And I said, well, I never want to do anything that would call into question my motives to take a vote. So I abstained, which of course immediately caused people to file an ethics complaint on me, which was thrown out as ridiculous. I abstained because I felt like if there was any taint at all, I didn't want the vote itself to be tainted, and that I would rather abstain and explain that than cause the vote to be incorrect or invalidated.
Right.
Because the goal was going to be to move it out. I had told people I had a problem with the city manager's contract for many reasons. And within the first 2 months, it was my motion that said we're going to terminate this contract. And even though people have asked, what does it mean without cause? It's because his contract had been changed to where there was only 2 or 3 things that we could terminate him for. And even if we did, we were going to have to pay him out for the whole contract, which got more expensive as years went on. With FOAC, I started by saying we first have to look at the politicians and the elected officials. Because if we don't have clean hands, we can't ask other people to have clean hands. We have to make sure all the electeds, as we call them, are doing what they're supposed to do. Then we can branch out and ask other people to make sure they're doing what they should do. But you know how it is. You go into somebody and say, hey, we want to look at your books to make sure everything's right. And they go, well, when's the last time you looked at yourself? Okay, let's start there. We thought that was only going to take a couple of weeks. It turned out to be a little more extensive than we thought. But I think that the dedication of when I went into office, I said, I'm going to be straight up front. I'm going to be a fiscal conservative. I'm going to deal with a bad city manager's contract. And I'm going to continue to go forward with the attitude of it's got to be good for everybody, not just a few. And my proudest moment is that I've kept my word.
You absolutely have kept your word, and as far as I'm concerned, exceeded our expectations. I failed to mention 2 years in a row of no new revenue tax rates, which is extraordinary. For the decade leading up to the beginning of your term, taxes were raised by the city every year. And there are 5 taxing entities. The city, when Tommy Gonzalez assumed office in June 2014 as city manager, was exactly 25% of the overall property tax burden, and now stands at 29%. The city has grown fiscally. It's been very hungry for more taxpayer dollars and has assumed a great deal of debt. And so it's been one tax hike after another, after another, after another. And under your leadership and the leadership of this mayor, we have had 2 fiscal years in a row of no tax increase. I've never seen anything like it.
Well, I've said this, and I think that when you go into a budget hearing, you don't go in to say, how can I spend more money? Let's spend some more money. What can we do? Because most politicians love to build things they can put their name on. They love that plaque they get to look at every day and go, look, I built that. And I think you go into budget saying, how do we spend the money we collect right now more effectively and more efficiently?
Yes.
That should always be the basis. And I think that you, instead of saying, well, everybody only got a 5% increase, I mean, people talk about it, and the phrase has been used as zero-based budget, which is, no, you don't say, last year you had $1 million, how much more do you need? You say, last year you had $1 million, justify the $1 million, and then we'll go forward. And somebody says, well, right. Everybody has zero. You have to justify all the money you want. Each year. And then going forward, you can say, okay, guess what? This department doesn't need as much money this year, but this one over here might need more to do the same thing for various reasons. And that's the way I view budgeting, and this mayor has viewed budgeting that way too. Mayor Leeser has viewed it that way, as well as a couple members of city council have done that. Representative Fierro has been staunch. Representative Molinar has been staunch in his support. And so I think that there's a new attitude of, you don't ask for more money unless you're pretty sure that you have to have it, and you're absolutely sure that you're spending what you have effectively.
Yes, absolutely. So let me ask you a few specific questions. Should city government be in the business of entertainment? Should we be bonding large capital improvement projects for G League basketball, trolleys, public water parks? Is this within the role and scope of government? Have we gone too far?
I've always said that you have to take care of the necessities before you take care of the niceties. Government has proven it does the entertainment business really poorly. If we've decided that we need some amenities for this town, and amenities are great for any city, they really are, we can usually find someone else that can do it more effectively, efficiently, and cheaper than we can.
Tell us about the amphitheater in Northeast.
The amphitheater Northeast, I think, is a perfect example. People say, well, look at all the incentives you're giving them. Well, those are self-generated. We give them back incentives that they've generated without touching any of the general fund, without touching your tax property money, nothing.
That's a private project where a private company assumes the capital risk.
Yes. They are bringing
with
in
clawback measures.
Oh, and that's the other thing that we've been very poor at is clawbacks. It was like, hey, we're going to give you this incentive, and then 3 years later we find out you're not doing what you're supposed to, and we go, okay, well, don't do that anymore. Oh, no. If you didn't do what you were supposed to, you owe us back that money. And that deal in the Northeast is like that. They're going to spend between 80 and 100, I think a little more. And somebody says, well, what if it doesn't work? Well, guess what? It all comes back to the city. We get everything back.
Right.
Everything. It all comes back to us with the clawback clause. And that's the important part. If you're not going to do what you say, that's why we started looking at 380s. If you say, I'm going to have 100 jobs at $20 an hour, great. A year later, we come back and go, okay, show us your payroll. Do you have 100 employees? Are they getting paid $20 an hour? If not, remember that money we gave you? Yeah, bring it back. It's ours.
Good. Yeah, we really do need that. The 380 agreements, it's been loosey-goosey for a decade and a half.
Yeah, they're a little, we don't check people to make sure everybody's abiding. We're going to abide by it. The city will. We'll pay what we said we were going to pay.
Right.
On the other hand, you have to do what you said too.
Let's talk debt. The city is $2.3 billion in debt, and actually all 5 taxing entities plus water, it's exactly $10.7 billion. The city owes $2.3 billion of that, and of the $2.3 billion owed in principal and interest on all of our obligations, $852 million of that is certificates of obligation. That is non-voter approved debt issued without voter authorization. And just to put that in perspective, that is more CO debt than the 5 largest cities in Texas combined. Dallas and Houston together have less than $50 million in CO debt. We've got $852 million. We've had previous city councils issue $50, $100 million at a time, and not just for critical infrastructure, but cost overruns on entertainment projects. Where do you stand on certificates of obligation?
It's almost like, the drug for politicians. We'll just issue some more debt. As a matter of fact, the reason you can no longer in the state of Texas use COs for quality of life projects, part of the reason is because of El Paso, Texas.
Absolutely.
Because they looked down and went, you people are crazy down there. I got an idea. What if we let's just issue another $200 million. It's no big deal. And, when they say it's for emergency use, I define it as if a bridge collapses, that's emergency. If you want more seats in your arena, that's not an emergency. Unless there is a catastrophic failure of infrastructure, COs should not even be considered. It's not a last resort. It's a non-resort. You don't even go there. And so I say I'm completely against COs, and somebody says, well, what if there's a catastrophe? Okay, bridge collapses on I-10, that's our bridge, not a TxDOT bridge. That might be worth doing a CO because it cuts things down. But I just have to say that COs are nothing but a gravy train for people with projects they know the public will turn down.
Right. And the most commonly used instrument, of course, is general obligation bonds, that are called GOs. And so we're talking about the quality of life bond, the public safety bond, the community progress bond. These are bonds which all 3 of those together are over $1 billion. But at least we got to vote. Which brings us to the quality of life bond, which was voted upon November 6, 2012, $473,250,000, and it included 4 signature projects, which came in hugely over budget. That bond was at least $100 million underfunded, maybe $200 million. And the price tag changed on most of those projects without voter approval. And full disclosure, I, of course, was the plaintiff who sued to prevent the construction of a multi-purpose center in the heart of our downtown. And I did that because I oppose eminent domain, because I oppose displacing vulnerable people, and I oppose destroying cultural resources, critically important historic buildings. But I'm going to say, above all, I oppose deficit spending. We were sold on a $180 million project, which by the city's own admission would be $500 million or more in reality. Why were you so opposed to building an arena in downtown El Paso, and why do you feel it should go back to the voters?
For multiple reasons. From a technical end, I've always felt that Dodonguito was unworkable just from a technical end. As a guy who does ingress egress, how you get in and out of a building. When you look at that, you say, okay, we're going to build a 12,000 seat arena, and in Texas it averages 2 and change people per car. So where are we putting the 6,000 cars in the middle of that area?
No plan.
We don't have a plan. How are those cars going to get in and out?
What's the business plan?
There isn't one.
Right.
Except don't worry, it'll make money. To which everybody in the industry laughed at, and they went, sure it will. And so, it was a bad plan to begin with. It was at least $100 million underpriced at that point. And that grows every year. And now it's, $400 million, maybe $350 million underpriced.
Right. And what would be the impact if we issued all that debt in one go to build the thing at that price?
Well, I told somebody, I was talking to Buzz Adams, and we were talking about that. He said, well, didn't the voters vote on it? I said, well, a couple of things. The first one is, that's not what they voted on. If I came to you and I said, Max, I'm going to sell you a brand new Mustang convertible for $1,000. Would you like it? And you go, well, yeah. Okay. And you get to sit down and you say, let's do this. I said, okay, it's going to be $187,000. And you say, well, that's not what you said. But you said you wanted it. If you want it, you'll pay whatever price I tell you.
Right.
That's not true. And the idea of we can spend our way into being a better city, we've tried that for 12 years. For 12 years, or 10 years until the new council came in. For 10 years it was, let's keep spending. Our city will explode with growth. How's it done over the last decade?
And you bring us to one more really important point before we go on to talking about the mayoral race, and that is the city's population. So yes, we were told that these large capital improvement projects would attract people, would prevent the brain drain, and lead to unprecedented growth and prosperity. And this talk began with Joyce Wilson in the early to middle 2000s, a long time ago. And so what do we have? We've got a ballpark that needs a $5 million yearly subsidy. We've got trolleys that bleed money. We've got water parks that are poorly attended. I could go on and on and on. And what has this generated in terms of economic growth? Well, according to the latest census from 2010 to 2020, El Paso City grew a little less than 5%, while Texas grew something like 15%. However, since 2017, the city of El Paso has lost 6,000 residents. We've had the first measurable population decline since 1932, since the Great Depression, with a large portion of the exodus heading towards New Mexico and places where taxes are cheaper. But in your estimation, Brian, why are we losing people?
People talk about quality of life. And to me, quality of life is a couple of things. A tax base and taxes on property where my children and grandchildren can buy a house.
Yes.
Where young families, those first-time home buyers, can buy a house. Where we have streets that you don't have, I say potholes you could lose a Volkswagen in. We have to have streets that are functioning. We have to have first responders that are paid well enough that they want to stay here and work. That's quality of life. If you start out by saying you're going to have a safe city with streets that are good and a tax rate that's livable, let's start there. That's a quality of life. Now,
yes.
Niceties are great. I like them as much as anybody else. But let's make sure we can cover those first. And that, to me, is the most important thing. If you look at it, our population is stagnant. But every one of the outlying cities outside the city, even still in the county, and in New Mexico, have all grown.
Exploded.
Exponentially.
Socorro, Horizon City, we're talking between 20 and 40% growth in the last decade.
You look at two housing complexes. One of them, I understand, is going to be 10,000 homes by the time it's done in Horizon City, and 4,000 more in Santa Teresa. Do you think it's just a coincidence? It's right outside the city limits? I don't think so. I think that if we gain the confidence of people that they're not going to be overtaxed. They're not going to be burdened with silly projects and silly expenditures, that we can start growing. It slows businesses down too, because they look at it and go, okay, how can my employees live in this city, and what are we going to do? And everybody said for years, well, we just need more amenities. If we had more amenities, they'd all show up.
Right.
At what point do you decide, insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different outcome? Well, my question would be, when are we going to go, hey, that didn't work, let's try something else?
Yeah, I mean, retirees are leaving in droves. I mean, on my own home that I bought in 2010, I've seen my property tax go from $6,500 up to over $9,000, with most of that due to city increases. Mm-hmm. And I think people are fed up. And you and Art Fierro and Joe Molinar, in particular on City Council, and of course the mayor, I think have done a great job responding to that. So let's talk about the mayoral race. You are leaving early from District 1 to run for mayor. That's a pretty big step. Now, why did you decide to do that?
That's one of the hardest things I've had to do in recent years. I love being a representative of D1. I don't just like it. I love being a representative of D1. I love fixing the problems we've had. I love the fact that when we had a tragedy on Emory that we moved within months to try and remedy the problem, that we're giving people's answers, and we're having meetings where we're allowed to ask tough questions. I love being D1 rep. I truly do. I took a look at the field that was running for mayor, and I said, we have some good news. We have some good things going on. We have, a new contract with the police. We have a lot of good things happening. And I listened to people running talking about nonsense. I'll promise you anything if you'll come vote for me. And I went, that's not based in reality. And I decided that I was going to take my skill set, offer it to the public, and say, I will always tell you where we are. And it may not be the best news in the world, but you're going to hear from where we are. And I understand how to get things done. I understand how to negotiate to the middle ground, which is why when I was in law school, I won an international negotiation championship. I looked at the skill set and I looked at the field, and I just said, this is something that I have to do, because if I had stayed in my seat, and we'd seen some numbers, I was moderately popular in my seat, that I could stay in my seat, and I told my wife, I said it would be like having a ringside seat to a train wreck. And I don't want to have a ring, and my city deserves better. And so I stepped up.
Right, and speaking for us, for the Taxpayer Revolt, what we've seen the last 15 years is a relatively small number of families contribute disproportionately to local elections, city and county, as well as to our state delegation elections, with the aim of bonding more projects, with the aim of increasing deficit spending, which of course leads to higher taxation, to build more and more amenities, which of course drives certain local companies. And this has been the ethos. This has been the way of doing things now for a long time. And you seem to be from the camp, we need to be fiscally responsible, we need to stem the bleeding, we need to provide tax relief, we need to reassess, right? Mm-hmm. And so you always have candidates in every election who are supported by those guys. And this election is no exception. And so you have, a Renard Johnson, for example, who on the one hand says, we need more projects, we need more spending, we need a big deck plaza. Why don't we build that arena in downtown El Paso? He's talking about $1 billion or more in new spending, and then says, I'm going to lower taxes, I'm going to fix the potholes in the streets. And we've heard this before, haven't we? I mean, Dee Margo, for example, ran an entire campaign holding the line on taxes, but instead presided over the largest city spending binge in history. How do you feel about the current dynamic? Are we far off here?
Well, I'm not going to talk about any of the individual candidates that I'm running against. The philosophy of the mayor's office is for sale or rent is disingenuous to everybody who pays taxes in El Paso, because that is the people's office.
That is quite a strong statement you just made, though. Are you implying that it has been for rent?
I just think that the idea of no sweat, I'm going to let whoever's got the most money pick who the mayor is. That's why I'm 90% self-funding.
And that's extraordinary, actually.
I mean, it's because if I'm elected mayor, everybody knows that I'm their mayor. I'm not somebody else's mayor. One of the things in my decision-making process, I was talking to somebody that is part of the entertainment industry in El Paso, who said to me, we were talking about some of the equipment and things that various places in town wanted. And I said, well, what did council say? And this individual looked me in the eye and said, this was before I had announced, and said, well, if we get the right mayor, we'll have everything we want. And I went, excuse me?
That's extraordinary.
And they said, we will have everything we want if we get the right mayor. And that was one of the final straws for me, because I just said, okay, I voted in ways on council that I knew would make people that are large donors angry, but it was what I thought was right for El Paso.
And currently, the pet project of the large donors is the 5-block deck plaza that is planned for I-10. And we're told this is a $207 million project, when in point of fact, Stantec, the consulting firm that was paid at $1.3 million to come back with a cost estimate, produced the figure $412 million, which was actually kept from City Council, kept from the County Commissioner's Court, and certain folks have had a hell of a time explaining how we get from $412 million to the current figure of $207 million. But are the taxpayers going to be on the hook for this, Brian?
Oh, wait, this just in, it's now $318 million. wait. Or is that $813 million? I don't know, but I tell people when they say, are you for the deck park or against the deck park? I said, I'm going to make this simple. I'm against using taxpayer money for the deck park. Am I for or against the deck park? I don't know. And here's why I don't know. I was at a meeting and I said, I will buy anybody dinner who can tell me what it's going to cost. You know why you don't know? Because they don't know.
Exactly.
Okay, how much is it going to cost for maintenance? In Dallas, it's $5 million for 3 blocks a year. So how much is it going to cost for maintenance? You don't know, because they don't know. I don't know. Nobody does. What are you going to put on it? Well, we have some ideas, so you don't really know. No. You don't know what's going to cost. You don't know where the money is coming from. You don't know what's going to go on it. You don't know where the maintenance is going to come from. You don't know who's going to pay for the maintenance. Wow, what a great project. I don't know if I'm for or against it. That's why when somebody said, why did you vote for the study to see? I said, because if it's a great project, I don't want to leave it behind, but I don't know if it's a great project or a boondoggle. When I know, I'll make a decision if I'm for or against it. The one thing I can say I'm against is taxpayer money going there. They said if we do this study, we'll have a chance to get grant money and federal money and state money, and that's all wonderful and good for them, and that would make a wonderful idea. But we have to do M&O, and I don't want taxpayer money going into it.
And M&O is going to be $10 million or more, I'm sure, though.
I don't know what it is, and the funny part is, I should know. I'm the mayor pro tem. I should have as much information as anybody in the city, and I have not a sniff on how much it's going to cost, on what it's going to be to maintain. Could be a great project. We don't know. I want to know before I vote on it.
Right. What are your top policy priorities if elected? What do you want to get done as mayor?
We're dealing with an issue right now with a pension for public safety. There's a tier that needs a cost of living increase. Continuing to take care of the public safety and increasing the number of people, we've got a plan in place. The academy 18 months, 20 months ago now, had 14 people in it.
And now you've got 44.
Now we've got 44. This is the first year we should have 90 new officers graduated in a year.
Right.
So our new pay scale is working. That's good news. I mean, I want to make sure we keep that going. And I think that the urge, when people are angry and realize that the city's been jacking their taxes up every year, there's a real anger. The funny part is, after 2 years of no new revenue, people are like, oh yeah, taxes are fine, we're doing great. We're doing great so far, but if you take your eye off the ball, it can change that fast.
Yeah, it requires constant attention, doesn't it?
Constant
Now,
attention.
you also talked to us about finding a dedicated revenue stream, $40 million a year for streets. How are you going to get there?
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I tasked the staff with and the CFO, because I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and they know that budget better than any elected official ever will. And Robert Cortinas is brilliant. And
He really is brilliant,
and he's creative. And I said, find me what we can do on a regular basis that puts 40 plus million. I think it should be 45, because if you're up 10%, then your roads aren't just the same; they're actually getting better. And that's what he's working on right now.
It's a challenge because we know that in FY 2026, the city is going to have to start bonding again because we have voter-approved bonds, public safety bond and community progress bond. We have to bond about $600 million over a period of maybe 3 or 4 fiscal years. Starting in FY 2026, it'll be very, very, very difficult, maybe even impossible to avoid a tax hike because of decisions that were made before you were elected.
And one of the things that will help mitigate it when we looked at the debt is if the multi-purpose center, the arena, if the citizens vote that we do not have to do that project, it'll cut the top off the escalating debt, because that's 130 that we won't have to issue, 30 more we can pay back, and when we sell the property and do it in veto, that'll help alleviate some of it also.
Right.
So it will cut the top off the debt. But yeah, we're in dicey times right now. We've got to get creative. We have some creative people at the city, and they've been tasked with it. Hey, I tasked them with making downtown a walkable downtown, and they came back with a price tag of under $10 million for the whole project.
Brian, while the city tightens its belt and achieves no new revenue, and the state provides real tax relief on the school side of our property tax bill, the county is planning to bond $894.4 million, including a $174 million CO. Not just essential stuff, but all kinds of goodies, trails, $105 million for the Coliseum, which is a lot for the Coliseum, and all kinds of stuff, which will pretty much increase the county tax so much that the tax relief that we would feel from the city, we're not going to feel. Isn't that right?
So many times, because of the 5 entities, we also don't talk to each other.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no time when the board president and the superintendent of each of the schools and the mayor and the county judge all sit down together, head of UMC, head of community college, and goes, here's our tax strategy over the next 10 years. And individually, they all operate as individuals that we actually heard say, well, the city didn't raise their taxes. You know what that means? We can raise ours.
Right.
Hey, they didn't charge you anymore. People expect to be charged more, so we'll take their part. And it was like, that's not why we did that. It's the challenge to everybody to be responsible governors and responsible electeds and say, just because you're charging less doesn't mean I get to charge more. Maybe we should all charge less.
Yes.
What a concept. And by less, I mean just hold it flat. When people start talking about, I'm going to slash your taxes, they're lying. They're not going to slash your taxes. It's impossible. With where we are with inflation and everything else, what you can do is at times maybe squeak it down a little bit, and we actually looked at that last year. Or keep it flat. When someone says, oh, don't worry, I'll lower your taxes, it's a great political scam, and that's what it is.
It is a political scam. It's dishonest.
I am going to give everybody unicorns to ride to work and flying cars, and you won't have to pay your utilities, and I'll lower your taxes, and everybody will have a job.
Right. So Brian, I mean, as District 1 rep, you stated earlier you're moderately popular. That's not true. You're very popular.
Thank you.
We know this to be true because we really do have our finger on the pulse, especially of that district. So you're going into this race with a lot of wind behind you. Even though you have a large number of competitors, we have high hopes for your success here.
Thank you.
And why don't you tell us who's endorsing you? What endorsements have you lined up so far? Because this is actually pretty interesting.
It's an interesting array that have endorsed me. First of all, I will tell you that the firefighters union have endorsed me.
That's big.
And to me, I'm super proud of that because, I mean, that's the first responders saying, you are taking care of public safety. The sheriffs have endorsed me.
There it is.
I have the Black Democrats endorse me, the East Side Democrats endorse me, the Paso del Norte Tejanos endorse me, the El Paso Tejanos endorse me, the Frontera Mexican American Democrats endorse me, the Libertarians have endorsed me, the West Side Republican women have endorsed me.
Hold on, let me stop you. You've received endorsements from Democrats, Republicans, and Libertarians.
Yes.
All three.
And the funny part is when I say that, somebody will say, oh, he was endorsed by Democrats, we can't vote for him. Or, oh, he was endorsed by Republicans or Libertarians, we can't vote for him. I think that I proudly can say that across the board, people have looked down and said, you know, this is somebody that's going to take care of El Paso. And it's a wide range. And I'm really proud of that. I'm really proud of it. It's not a party, you're my party, so I'll endorse you. It's, we think you will do the best job, so we're going to endorse you.
Right.
And so, you know, no matter what your genre of politics is, I'm proud that across the board people have said, you will take care of El Paso. And the thing I hear most that makes me the proudest is they say, you'll keep your word.
Absolutely. And we love the fact that you're 90% self-funded, which means you are beholden to nobody. And your motives are pure. There's just no question about that. You are not the guy to develop a private agenda, as Tommy Gonzalez did. You clearly have the voters at heart, and not just some voters, but an incredibly broad spectrum, because you've earned support from so many different sectors of our local community. And again, you know, we endorse you without any reservations at all. We think that you've done an exceptional job.
And Taxpayer Revolt endorses me.
Let's not forget. Let's not forget. We are the pickiest, the most stringent in terms of our endorsements, and sometimes we don't endorse anybody, but this was the easiest choice we've ever made.
I just, you know, I'm proud of the people who tell me that they know I'm going to look out for them. I mean, I'm not doing any smoke and mirrors on this thing. You know,
Yes.
This is an expensive race, and you know, I laughed because somebody said to me, "Oh, you just want an increase in salary." I say, when I'm being an attorney, I'm a minimum of $350 an hour. I'm not making more money at City Hall.
No.
And you know something? That's okay. I knew it when I ran for the job. I know it when I'm running for this job. And I'm proud of our motives. I'm proud of our campaign. My wife is my campaign manager. I don't hire a bunch of out-of-town people. You know, want to talk about brain drain? My campaign meetings are usually held at about 6:30 in the morning at my kitchen table with my wife and I.
And you're remarkably accessible. You give media interviews, you make yourself available for questioning. I know that you attended Libertarian Open Mic Night. I mean, you are attending every event available to you and talking to just about everybody. And you take phone calls from almost anybody.
I've had some people that have not endorsed anybody that I said, I know that they're not going to endorse me, but I'm going to go to the forum. And they said, why? And I said, because they deserve to hear what somebody running for mayor wants to do. And so when I call people back, when they call and leave phone calls, a lot of times it's me who calls back, because I try to call back if at all possible. And they'll say, I thought somebody else would call me. Sorry, you're stuck with me. I love this town.
Right.
I want this town to continue to be better. We have some good news going on. I'm afraid that if we don't keep it going on, it'll turn in a minute, and suddenly in 4 years, people are going to look down and go, what happened?
Yes.
And I want them at the end of 4 years to look back and say, Brian Kennedy was mayor, he kept his word, he did everything he could for everybody in El Paso. I've had a success if that's true.
Yeah, well, we're certain that will be true. And where can our viewers go to support you? Where do they find you online?
ElectBrianKennedy.com is the website.
Okay. And what kind of help would you need at this point? Block walkers?
You know, we have actually knocked on more doors than any campaign in the history of El Paso.
Is that so?
I've had more than three or four different people that do politics say, how many doors? And I give them the number, and they go, over 100,000 doors? And I went, yes. And I had, 40 people, some volunteers, some paid. But we had a team of 40 who I'm taking to lunch here this weekend just because they are my inspiration, not vice versa.
Right.
These people who are out there, knocking on the doors and talking to people, and I'm always available while they're knocking, and I'm driving around when somebody has a question. Somebody will have a question, they'll call me and say, hold on, let me call Brian and see if he's available, and if I'm nearby, I'll run over and talk to the person. I just, I'm proud of my campaign. ElectBrianKennedy.com. Yes, I'm mostly self-funded, but if you really feel the urge to give me money, there's some place you can give me money. But I will tell you, most of all, I appreciate your comments and your ideas. We've had an amazing run, and we're not done yet.
No, you're not. And we look forward to seeing you as our next mayor, Brian.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for this conversation. Again, we endorse Brian Kennedy for mayor, and we hope that you will all come out to vote starting next week, early voting, and get the word out. Thank you.